وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري فداه أرواح العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another session where we've been discussing the importance of the science of hadith. The science that deals with the preservation and the protection of our great intellectual heritage. The words of wisdom that have been passed down from generation to generation, originally being the words of the Imams, our great divinely appointed leaders. And in looking at this great science, the science is great because the subject matter of the science, the subject matter that this science deals with, is great. Which is why I decided that we need to look at this before we move on to the actual specific narration that we're discussing in this series. The science of hadith has to do with authenticating narrations. In other words, determining whether or not these narrations are authentic and in fact original narrations that basically have come from the Imams, and not twisted or adulterated versions of those narrations. What we're trying to establish in this science is that this particular narration that we're looking at is in fact correct and authentic and original, and that it's not some fabricated narration that has been introduced into our culture and into our intellectual inheritance in order to deceive us. Why do we say that? Why is there an importance? Why is it significant for us to do that? Why is it important to establish whether this tradition is authentic or not? Well, because in our history we have had people, we've had certain power-hungry individuals fabricating these narrations in order to deceive the masses. It has happened. There's a great deal of fabricated narrations out there. And they have been the source of deception for so many people for such a long time. It was a fabricated narration that led to the rightful inheritance of the great mistress of the women of the world, Lady Fatima Zahra, being confiscated by the government of the time. It was a fabricated narration that led people to follow certain individuals at certain times, at certain pivotal moments in our history, that took all those masses to their death and basically led them astray from the straight path. It was fabricated narrations that had Imam Hussein killed on the day of Ashura. And it was fabricated narrations that distorted the pristine image of the Ahlul Bayt, of the commander of the faithful, of Imam al-Hasan and Imam al-Hussein and the subsequent Imams in certain societies, especially in ancient day Damascus or Sham. It was these fabricated narrations that have led us to the sorry state that we see in this day and age, the state of corruption within the Muslim nation, to the point that Muslims are killing Muslims, to the point that so-called Muslims are blowing up mosques, killing, innocent worshippers. If they could ever justify the killing of innocent civilians on the streets of Baghdad and Najaf and Karbala and Nasiriyah and Sadr City and Karachi and elsewhere, how could they ever justify the killing of innocent worshippers at a mosque of all places? They can't. Unless they resort to fabricated narrations. Unless they resort to perverted understandings of these fabricated narrations. Unless they resort to their own personal twisted interpretations of verses in the Holy Quran. So it's not only about fabricated narrations, but it's also their perverted understanding and perception of, quite authentic narrations as well. So the problem is prevalent, the problem is huge. And we're not trying to solve the problem of fundamentalism or extremism in this session. But what we are trying to address is the authenticity of narrations. Are we saying that there are no authentic narrations? Absolutely not. There are fabricated narrations that have plagued our history for a long time. Hence the importance of this knowledge. Hence the importance of this science, the science of narrations. And as we discussed in the previous session, the followers of Ahlul Bayt, the great scholars of the Shia school of thought, have had a very keen interest in this science because of their interest in the hadith themselves. And so the establishment of the authenticity of traditions has always been very important to us. And it's important for me to say that because I don't want to be misunderstood by saying what I have to say now. Because while it's important to establish the authenticity of narrations, it's also important, it's equally important to trust in the judgment of our great scholars that have exhausted every possible means of authenticating traditions and have come up with these great collections of hadith that we have today. So we also have to give them the benefit of the doubt. We also have to trust their judgment that when a person such as a Shaykh Al-Kulayni, may Allah be pleased with him, this great scholar of our faith, collects what he believes are true and authentic narrations in his great work, in his great masterpiece known as Al-Kafi, then we have to trust his judgment and give him a great degree of leeway when it comes to narrations that we don't quite understand. And we have to give those traditions the benefit of the doubt and assume that they are correct unless proven otherwise. So we have to create a balance. I hope I've made this as clear as I can. There has to be a balance between the importance of establishing the authenticity of narrations, on the other hand, trusting the judgment exercised by our great scholars who immerse themselves in this science, who spend their entire professional lives trying to establish the authenticity of narrations, and assume that what they have collected is correct and authentic unless we could employ scientific means of proving them wrong. I think it makes perfect sense. Now, in order to do that, we have to understand one thing, and that is we have different means of transmitting narrations from one generation to another. The first and the most obvious is for people to rely on other people's accounts. In that sense, I would narrate a tradition here on this show, on this program, and I believe that the narration is authentic because I saw it in a book and I trust the author of the book. The author of the book could be a marja, for example. I certainly trust the marja, and therefore I believe that the narration is authentic because I believe the author. Now the author got that narration, obviously he lives in this day and age and therefore he wasn't there to hear the narration from the Imam. So he narrates it from another author that preceded him, say a 19th century scholar or another marja. And because he believes that that marja is a reliable source of knowledge, he therefore believes that the narration is authentic.